And I'm just going to start the recording.
Oh.
Just as you started making those funny vocal exercise noises.
Hi. See, folks, you need to understand. He doesn't even pay me for this. He just fucking bullies me,
I don't even
and
pay
then
myself for this.
yeah. I mean, I guess technically you paid me this past week, but that was by sending me fucking plushes of fake characters, and that was for my birthday. You asshole. God.
Wow, okay. I send you
And
something for your birthday and you call me an asshole. Well, you know what? Here's the thing. Because we're talking about, like, obviously we don't have any sponsors yet because, we don't have enough subscribers. We don't have enough people following. That's fine. We're doing this for ourselves. But I thought of a great way to fix that problem. Can you guess what I'm talking about?
no.
I did it. We're using that extra space in the side of our display to put Subway Surfers on.
Nah.
This is going to keep people's attention. No, this is definitely going to work. This is definitely going to work.
Uh, no, no, no. As a Zoomer, I have to tell you, no.
Oh, come on.
God,
I think this is.
I.
Look, I'm just saying, we have that space. We're not streaming live. Eventually, we'll start streaming live, but right now, we're not. And, obviously, we got to get that Zoomer audience. And it's absolutely not distracting at all to have this thing moving at, like, the peripheral vision of whatever it is you're looking at. Like, for me, I have this freaking window open, and it's just playing Subway Surfers, and it's annoying as hell to watch. But, uh, I also feel a little bit ashamed. I actually liked Subway Surfers as a game. I don't know. I found it a fun way to waste time when I was in, like college. But regardless, we're gonna have Subway Surfers on the side now. So if anyone finds our commentary boring, which is totally fair, you can now just watch Subway Surfers. And it's definitely kind of stealing content from whoever made this gameplay of Subway Surfers. So now that joke has kind of lasted a little bit too long, I am removing it.
Actually, that is a question. Like because I see it so often. Like my question is, do they actually play fucking Subway servers to get that footage, or do they just steal from other people who do play?
I mean, so I,
That's
I
something I'm
don't I don't
considering.
know. I suppose if you look up, because that one I just looked at was like Subway Surfers 10-hour loop gameplay, and
Hmm.
it's like clearly someone did that, and I could just put it in my window, and there'd be no way for anyone to really guess that unless they went to look for that same gameplay and compared it. Meanwhile, most no, they're usually not playing it. I only encountered one of these videos in the wild by myself. After the meme had already
Hmm.
kind of played out for a bit. It was this really dumb YouTube drama thing that I'd gone down a rabbit hole for. And it started off, the first thing I noticed was this like video, like the most of the
Hmm.
video, right, was what looked like this person cutting soap. And I will admit, it was like satisfying to watch because like the soap would fall apart and deteriorate. And I was like, oh, this is kind of neat. It's like a weird texture. And then I noticed like
Hmm.
her face camera was in the corner, right? And initially,
Hmm.
like her hands weren't in her face cam footage, so I thought she was cutting the soap. Like I thought she was cutting it, and that was just something she was doing. I didn't get it at first. I was like, okay, this is weird, but whatever. Like, this is like a clip from someone's like stream. And then she raised her hands up, and I was like, wait a minute, how, who's cutting this? Who's cutting this stuff? And then I realized, oh, it's one of those things. It's one of them just like Zoomer attention span grabbers. And then I also noticed at that time, because I'm incredibly perceptive, there was a Subway Surfers window in the corner as well. So,
Ah.
and then like I was trying to listen to the rest of it, but I'm not gonna lie, it was the most distracting thing possible. I could not focus on what she was saying because there's like three other things like flooding my brain, and I was like, I can't even like look at the screen because I can't pay attention to the words she's saying.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, you gotta explain
Man,
yourself. You
that
gotta
that
explain yourself here, Pike. What is wrong with Zoomers?
um it's how to put it. So I'm not to the level where it's like, oh, I need the Subway Surf, but I'll have something on in the background while I'm playing a game, and I'll be listening to that too. It's like, and I'm interacting with the game, but also listening to whatever I'm like, I have on, right?
I think it's a
It's
little
just
different.
like, yeah, it's it's
For
like a next, yeah.
no, I mean, like, it depends on the game I'm playing. Not every game I can do that with. Generally, if I'm playing a game for like the first time, it's like I can't
Hmm.
have like something in the background playing because I'm trying to focus. I'm trying to like learn the game. I'm trying to enjoy the experience. I was recently playing like a lot of the Half-Life games, some for the first time, and it's like, yeah, I couldn't have something in the background playing because I was invested in like getting immersed in this game. Meanwhile,
Yeah, I
if
think
I'm
the
if I'm replaying something
I,
like Cyberpunk 2077, I'm replaying the game a little bit because of the update. It's like I can't have I can have something in the background during some parts because it's like, yeah, if I've played this mission before, I know the story, or I've done this like combat quest a bunch, so I can have like a podcast or something in the background, like our own podcast.
yeah,
Not really. I can't. I can't.
god
It's
damn.
so hard. It's so hard to re-listen to some of the podcasts because it's like hearing my voice is so weird to me still.
Oh yeah, it will never not be weird.
I feel like if I do it
What I
enough,
was gonna
I feel like I do it enough when I start if I start video editing I'll have to get used to it. It's just one of those things where I'll have to
yeah.
adapt.
Well, what I was gonna say is I think the most in terms of like Zoomer behavior I've ever done is so uh of course when I play Armored Core 6 I will play Gundam music because it's like well it's like I like Gundam battle music and it's like this is basically a Gundam game but good uh but when you you know how Armored Core 6 is like yeah once you do all the missions it's like cool that's it unless you go in multiplayer and it's like oh I had to redo these missions to like get combat logs and such when that happens I'll still keep the Gundam music on but then because I just hate myself I'll put on something like Babylon 5 or DS9 on in the background to just have more because it's like yeah this is just so routine to me at this point but yeah my generation's weird.
Okay, I'm
um
really glad. I hope that really didn't come through the audio, and I'm glad your tangent went on for a little bit because this giant spider just got into my apartment, and
Man,
and I had to go kill it.
yeah. So first this morning, he got stung by a wasp, and now a spider comes in. Is the place that all the insects go during winters just your house? Is
There's a
that just what
reason.
happened?
There's a reason I am moving in under a month. This place has way too many places for bugs to just enter, and there's really like there's. I wish it was just built better. I don't really have issues.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad I don't have issues with like roaches or anything gross like that. But it's literally just like things that somehow escape into here, and
Mm,
yeah,
mm,
it's incredibly annoying. I really hope that audio. Muted my mic, and then I went to go deal with this thing. But I'm not gonna lie. When I got back to my mic, it still had like orange lights on it instead of green. I think that means it was muted. Normally, it doesn't have
mm,
any lights when it's muted. So
mm.
I'm gonna have to like review that on the audio and hope it did not pick that up. And if so, I'm gonna have to cut it out because that would be loud and annoying as hell.
Mm-hmm.
Because I basically sprayed it, which is not too loud, but then I kind of got the hand vacuum and sucked it up. But the thing that scared me the
Yeah.
crap out of it, and I don't want to talk about it too much, like this thing just started jumping everywhere. It's a spider, a bouncing spider, man. I've never seen them do that.
You found the ultra rare encounter. You
Oh
found
man, I hope I
the
get a good
metal
drop
clone.
instead of just like terrified that I'm gonna go to sleep tonight and get either attacked by wasps again or spiders.
Oh, it's okay.
it's just the spooky
It,
season kind of greeting me.
Yeah, well, it's okay because every year, you eat 6 spiders in your sleep on average.
I don't know if that's true, but at the same time, I've been stung by 2 wasps over the course of 2 months while sleeping. So that's probably breaking some record there. And so yeah, I'm willing to believe the spider thing. Okay,
Yeah. But, well, uh, um,
come on, you got the
it's,
thought. Come on, you got it.
it's fine. We are way off topic. We need to get back to the fucking show.
No, 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 no,
Like,
no. We don't.
uh,
First off, you're saying back to. No, we haven't even started. We have plenty of other tangents to talk about because this not a great episode. Um,
yeah, it's not.
uh, it's called Dramatis Personae, which what does that mean in Latin? It sounds like Latin. Um,
I would assume dramatic persona, like dramatic, oh my god, like that's what I would assume. Like,
yeah, and tell
what?
me that fact about whose favorite or it's one of his favorite episodes.
Oh, Ira Steven Bears. It's one of his favorite. Oh, it's literally. I looked it up. It's literally just characters. Like that's what it means. So it's like, oh, I guess you would take it to mean caricatures instead of characters. But yeah, it's
Probably.
one of his favorites, and he's like,
And
oh, it's a third season show in the first season. People would say, oh, you need to know these characters more. You can't twist them this way, and he added on like saying like no one would be interested otherwise. He's like, yeah, but when you see Kira coming onto Dax, everyone would be interested in that. It's like, oh,
so I
it's
recently
like,
watched that. That doesn't seem like Kira coming on to. So let's just let's lay out the. We'll do a little bit of a different discussion this time because I'm not gonna lie, going scene by scene through this episode is not amazing. Uh,
I say just pull the threads we find interesting. That's
yeah, I mean, so
like,
to I guess to like start off, what Colbert obviously is the showrunner of DS9. Obviously, he's in large part the reason why DS9 is as good as it
I
is.
think at this point, I thought it was Berman still. Like,
You'd have to double check
um,
that. I think it was him. But
hang on.
regardless, right? He was obviously very big into the process of DS9, right? He was a writer, he was a director, he did a lot of work when it came to this. And to hear this is his favorite
Mm.
episode is really kind of like, uh-huh.
No, it's not one of his favorite. It's not his favorite. It's one of his favorites.
I mean, even still,
It's a
like
favorite.
to say it's one of his favorites, right? Like, what is? I don't know what that means. Maybe it's like, oh, all of the episodes are my favorite. It's like, oh, okay, but like in reality, you probably mean this is in like your top 10. I'm not gonna lie, I think
Yeah.
this is a garbage episode. Um, this
Yeah.
I
Oh, okay. So
this might be
right now it's. Mhm.
no, you go because you were I think finishing the question from earlier.
Yeah. It's it should still be Michael B. Pillar, who's the executive producer. It's later on that he moves on to Voyager and Bear takes over. So yeah,
All right, well,
yeah.
regardless, Baird had a huge impact in the series. So,
Mm-hmm.
it is as good as it is because of him in part. Meanwhile, for him to say
Mm-hmm.
this is good, this is probably like, this is I didn't think it was as bad the first time we watched it. The second time watching it around, I think it's worse. This is probably
Mm-hmm.
the third bad episode of season 1. We have Move
Mm-hmm.
Along Home, Dax, and now Dramatis Personae. And
Yeah.
yeah, I just think like
So.
this episode, similar to Babel, it has a core issue that I think makes it challenging to on rewatch because you don't really get anything out of characters in this episode. Everything's a little bit like
Mm-hmm.
we'll get into it, but things seem very flat, like caricature is how you sort of said it before, or flanderized, yeah, flanderized.
Yeah, Flanderized.
And yeah, I know the word. I was just stumbling over it for some reason. A lot of characters seem flanderized or caricatured, and as a result, you really can't get much from them. It ends up being kind of like, yeah, I mean, I guess that's just the way they were in this episode, and I guess it represents a core aspect of their character that you can maybe draw something from. And at the same time, it's like,
Yeah.
but we already kind of knew some of that stuff. So to just
Yeah.
exacerbate it, there is a way I think it could work, but it does not work here. There's some good scenes with Odo and Quark, but that's kind of default for a lot of these episodes, right? Like anytime Quark and Odo are sharing a scene, it's pretty good. And then, of
Yeah.
course, the ending of this episode is really god awful. And it's one of those things where it's just like, okay, if that's how you're ending it, you very clearly didn't think through the ending. So, I mean, let's just
Mm-hmm.
we're just gonna kind of get into it. Unless you had anything else to kind of add, maybe details or anything, fun
Oh,
facts.
well, I had a question for you since you brought them up. So, Move Along Home is just like, I would say like it's almost a nonsensical plot with issues um of like, oh, this is not how First Contact would be, like, how they would resolve it. And then Dax is literally a terrible show trial that, there's so many issues with what they're arguing, how they argue it, and how it's run. Well, how it's ran. Yeah, either way, it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
And the resolution, at least ends it, so it's like, hey, it's resolved. Curzon Dax was not guilty. And it's like, okay, fine. but it leaves those questions in the air that are never answered by any other Star Trek series. Uh, this it's been a while since I've seen the episode, but I generally remember the beats and such. It's basically a move along home episode where it's like this. Its story is just like okay, this happens. I mean, at least with no, even yeah, it's a move along home sort of bad episode. So
Well, the
there's
reason
nothing.
no, finish your point, please.
Yeah, I was gonna say, at least with Move Along Home, it's okay. This is just a bad episode. Dax, I still think Dax is, I like, or may I say it differently before, but I'm gonna say now, Dax is the worst episode just for personal watching because the philosophy, like they're arguing these legal and philosophical points, but they're doing it wrong and not understanding what they're saying, and like all these like deeper issues that go on here, right? And that's worse than Move Along Home, where it's just a bad episode. I think that's also how this episode is bad. It's not offensive bad. It's just bad, and it's like, oh, I don't want to rewatch this after this review because you get nothing. But yeah.
So kind of. I agree. I think Dax is the worst as well. For me, a lot of it
Mm-hmm.
is in part because it kind of just assassinates Dax's character up until that point. And Dax doesn't have that much to
Mm-hmm.
assassinate, but it's kind of like, why would you build up this character at all and then have this episode that completely ruins her and undoes everything that we've learned about her from that point? That's more to discuss when we do. We'll probably do like a full season breakdown after we're done reviewing these last 3 episodes, and we'll talk about like, okay, why is this like one of the worst, and we'll compare some of the bad ones. But the reason that this one's so bad for me is
Mm-hmm.
similar to Babel. It is very much like there's a large chunk of the episode that is really irrelevant of character. Like nothing about these characters you're going to be able to take and move forward with them on this. They're completely out of character. That's kind of the point. Is they're only acting as a caricature of themselves, which means the only times
Mm-hmm.
in the story in the episode that they're acting in character is the beginning, which is fine, and the ending, which is
Mm-hmm.
really dumb. So the only in character
Mm-hmm.
stuff that they do is at the end. And I'm sitting there thinking like, I mean, okay, I guess that's just what happens. Like the only parts of these episodes that I feel are anyway meaningful are the parts that are bad or just neutral. So it's a bad episode. I mean, and I guess we can like start it off. So the first thing, and this is important because it sort of starts off some of the plot, is let's see, Kira and Cisco have been having an argument. There is a spaceship of Valerians, which I don't think it's spelled the same way as Valerians from Game of Thrones, but it's funny because it sounds almost identical. Uh,
Yeah.
they're basically during the Cardassian occupation, they were essentially weapon runners and gun runners for the Cardassians. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, now that that whole issue has been tentatively resolved with the treaty, they're doing more business. And Kira still suspects that they are running weapon grade supplies to Cardassia, and
Yeah.
she is adamant about stalling their refueling and resupplying at the station, and saying like, we need to do a full inspection of their ship, we need to scan where they've been, we need to do all this stuff. And Cisco's not really having it. He's disagreeing with her
Mm-hmm.
because, as far as he's concerned, she is being a little overly paranoid. They don't have any they don't have any real reason right now to stop them. They only have speculation. So that's just like the start of their argument, right? Like,
Yeah.
I guess she does have a reason to believe that there is some sort of issue going forward, but ultimately, like Cisco saying, like, look, we're not going to pursue this. If it becomes an issue later on, maybe, but like right now, you don't want to be known as the station that like discriminates against former Cardassian allies in a
Well,
part of space that largely has a lot of people who probably worked with Cardassians before.
yeah. So basically, so what he says is like, if Kira can bring him proof, he'll do it, right? But like he'll contact the Federation, and if she brings proof, they're going to end trade, right? But here's the thing, like, do they mention in the treaty? In like, it's one of those things, just like you said, like Cisco would be like, we can't just like because It's one of those just things like, is there something in the treaty that says they can't trade with, or like the Cardassians can't trade with them
Well,
for
they're not
weapons?
even they're not
Because
even they're not even necessarily trading with them. From what we learned later in the episode, they're just taking similar stops that they used to take when they were running guns. So they would basically like go to one location, get supplies for like gun like firearm materials, go to another place, get more materials, then go to the third place where they were constructed.
yeah, it's just like, well, I'm just saying everything like, well, even if they are doing that, what's like, am I supposed to because it like what is the legal justification if they are doing this for stopping them? Like, sure, you don't want it to happen, but do you have a leg to stand on in the legal argument? It's like, and
Well,
like,
and
I
it's
think this
not
is just
it's
Kira
not delved into too
cowboying
much.
again.
Yeah, it's a little cowboying. It's not delved into too much, but theoretically, right? It might be illegal to be gun running in this part of space, right? Like
Oh, that's true. It could be.
unlicensed weapon manufacturers or unlicensed weapon transporters and stuff like that. We don't necessarily know. It could be. I could believe it would be, and like obviously, like some of the materials that they're transporting might also have alternative uses, right? It's like, oh yeah, we're moving these chemicals that are occasionally used in like phasers, but they're also maybe used in medicine. We're transporting medicine. You can't stop us. So you're right. She's cowboying, but like, I think there is at least some basic legal justification, but there's no proof that any crime is being committed. There's not. They haven't hit like a bare minimum probable cause for Cisco to feel confident in this. And again,
Mhm.
like we're hanging on this scene a little long, but really it's just Cisco's made his decision. Kira's not happy with it. She's been sort of hounding the issue. Uh,
Yeah.
then we move on to the world. Like they're supposed to be getting a bunch of Klingons back who are doing some sort of like bioscan of like different star systems, and they come through
Hmm.
the wormhole, and then they self-destruct. They explode. But just before they
Yep.
explode, someone from the ship transports onto DS9, which they let them do. And then it takes a while, like it's a little bit disturbed, but they finally get the person through, and then the person dies, saying "I win," and he's dead. The Klingon dies,
Yeah.
and like that's sort of the inciting incident. Like, oh god, like what happened here? Um, we can really just describe this because again, it's so hard to talk about this episode when people are acting so out of character. The Klingon
Yeah.
vessel had done some like scans of a planet that had what they describe as some sort of weird orbs, which these orbs apparently collected the consciousness of a once or now extinct telepathic alien race. And
Hmm.
by holding these things, that alien race was basically overturned because of paranoia, which I guess makes sense. If you're telepathic and you could like read each other's minds, people might become like really kind of like hostile towards each other because they can know what people are thinking at any given time. So the society
Hmm.
basically broke down because no one trusted anyone, and as a result, like these orbs which stored their consciousness also stored their paranoia, and it infected the Klingons, and now it's infecting the station. Now you might be asking, wait a minute, what do you mean it's infecting the station? Are the orbs on the station? No, 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 it's like a virus, kind of, not really.
Hmm.
uh, they don't really ever explain what it is that's affecting people. At one point in the episode, when they were describing it, my first thought was, "Oh, so is it like a psychic field? Like these orbs basically like inputted some sort of like psychic?" And it's funny that I have to get to use this word, but like a psychic meme, right? Like a psychic, like mental
Hmm.
construct within someone's head that like makes them paranoid. No, no, no. It's actually like a virus, but it's also like something that's neurological in the brain that like Bashir can send like an electromagnetic signal out to cause it to leave someone's brain. But then it's also something that like permeates the air and can be sucked into space. So it's never really explained what this virus thing is. I guess I'll just call it a virus because they get it because they brought the
Yeah.
infected Klingon on board, which is another issue because we know transporters scan for viruses and remove them.
So it's a telepathic virus, if I recall. Like they say, it's a purely like it's almost like a mental disorder that's contagious.
Yeah, and then of
I
course they
guess.
have a situation where they can basically expel it from their bodies and have it sucked into space, which means it has to have some physical component to it.
Yes, but counterpoint, if the thing is not programmed to recognize it as such, it can't, like, it'd be like saying, why didn't you catch, like this newly developed thing. It's like, well, I've never seen it before, and it didn't like proc as a threat. It's one.
No, I'm sure I'm fine with the. I think like part of the issue though, right, is Star Trek has always kind of gotten fast and loose with like foreign pathogens and stuff like that via
Mhm.
transporters, right? We've always kind of just nodded along and said, yeah, yeah, yeah. When you transport directly from a planet back onto a starship, we're just trusting that you're not bringing foreign pathogens, right?
Yeah,
And like it's never been too much of an issue except when they say it is. So, TNG had this
yeah.
a few times where it's like we scanned for viruses, how to get through? Oh, it was disguised as this. It's like, okay, well it feels like this is something that shouldn't be that common. Or rather what it should be, right, is all right, what you do is you don't have your transporter in the open area because for the for DS9 the transporter is like right in the command room. Like you could basically walk right from the command room right into a transporter. So there's not like a containment field or a containment room. You could really just like teleport someone to a proper room that's locked off to just in case. That's what you probably should do. That should probably be standard practice. But
Hmm.
Star Trek's never really been interested in that, so we kind of just give it a bye. So whenever it happens, I feel like it's something we should still criticize because we gave you this pass for how like scientific like this would actually function, and
Hmm.
instead you just kind of violate it. It's like, okay, well that's still an issue now. Like I'm willing to give you the pass. I'm willing to suspend my disbelief that you can just remove all unknown pathogens from a person when they go from planet back to starship and back. But when you violate that, it's like, okay, well, now it's an issue and it's huge for this episode, so it's not like a small thing either.
Hmm.
And so I guess we should probably just like we could probably go character to character and start describing what's happening to them because I think that might be the more interesting way of talking about this. So one thing that they do is first off, Odo is immune to it. He has what basically looks like a panic attack, and like his face explodes outward and then reshapes and he passes out. He wakes up at the doctor's
Hmm.
office and he has no idea what happened, but like basically we learned that it did not. His body rejected this weird telepathic virus, and as a result, it hurt him, but he's fine. And everyone else is now acting weird. And I think Dax is the first person we sort of see act this way. Although before that, like before we start talking about all the characters, I do want to talk about one scene I really did like. Odo goes to Quark, and he basically knows that Quark interacted with these Klingons before they went through the wormhole, right? So they stopped at DS9, went to Quark's,
Hmm.
went through the wormhole, and then like basically since he was like the last person that all the Klingons interacted with, Odo's like, look, I want to learn what happened on that spaceship. We have some like video recordings from the ship, but nothing clear yet. And Quark is like, yeah, it's like, what's it worth to you? And Odo's like, I'm not going to pay you anything because I don't know what you have yet. And then Quark is like, well, then I have nothing. And I do find it as a nice little
Mm.
like back and forth between the two because it's very clear that like Odo knows Quark knows something, but Quark doesn't want to admit it, and he's just gonna be like, yeah, I know nothing. Even plausible deniability. Also, I'm getting some feedback from you. I think it's fine now.
Oh, okay.
No, it's fine. It's weird. It's like it used to be more of an issue, and now it's just like, okay, if it happens, it only happens for like a couple seconds. Um. Anyway,
Hmm.
then Odo basically is like, hey, so I heard you're a fifth Hollow Suite. Yeah, it needs some repairs, and Repair Team 5 is going to be working on it later today. And Quark's like, yeah. Odo then says, well, it looks like I'm going to, as constable, need to place a priority order for some other repair job. And then basically he's saying like, yeah, one of your methods of income generation is going to have to remain offline unless you tell me what I want to know.
Damn me.
So,
Damn me.
I
Damn me.
mean,
Damn.
yeah, I find it like a really cool. I mean, it's a nice little back and forth between the two, right? Odo has this leverage. Quark is basically like, okay, look, I'll tell you because it does benefit me. Because you can't have Quark give the information freely. That's just not who he is. And of course, Odo doesn't want to
Hmm.
placate Quark, so the only thing he can really do is threaten him not to give the information. So
Mm.
that's like
Yeah.
the only good scene in this episode. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's go character to character and just talk about how everyone's kind of acting, and we can kind of maybe discuss a little bit about like if we feel how their acting is good as opposed to like maybe what it represents for their character. And we can start with Bashir because Bashir is really the first person who's a little bit more overt with it. Um,
Hmm.
Bashir basically like after he fixes up Odo, he talks to Odo a little bit, kind of talking about like, hey, I figure I can't really tell if you're okay because I don't really know how changelings work yet. I don't really have anything to compare it to, so we're just going to take a guess and say you're okay for now, but let me know if anything happens. And then Bashir
Mm.
brings up the fact that, so, turns out this fight between Kira and Cisco about the Valerian ship, it might cause some problems in the station. And Odo's just like very confused. He's like, "What do you mean?" And Bashir's like, "You're right. It's still too early to tell." And then Odo kind of presses him a little
What?
bit, but he's still very confused. And Bashir's like, "Well, the worst thing we'd have to do is one day like choose sides." So,
Okay,
like,
Bashir.
the thing is, Bashir for the whole episode is essentially a fence sitter. That's what his character is sort of caricaturized as, right? Everyone
Yeah.
ends up choosing sides between Kira and Cisco, and Bashir never chooses any side. And in fact, later in the episode, I do kind of like this from Odo. Odo basically tricks Bashir by playing into his paranoia of fence sitting, right? He says, instead of choosing a side, why don't you get leverage over both, and then you could figure out which side you want to choose after that. And he's like, oh, so how am I going to get this leverage? It's like, well, if you can cure the mind virus that's infecting them, then you, by controlling the virus, you control the whole crew. And Bashir's like, brilliant, I'll find a cure for it. And that's how Odo convinces Bashir to find a cure for the mind virus.
Mm.
Like
Hmm.
like Odo's pretty
Yes.
much in top form this episode. As the only person who's in character, he's the only good character other than Quark.
Hey. Quark's in character too. He's a good character.
True, but I think
Calm
that
down.
no, Quark has one of the scene, but yeah, like literally, it's another Babel situation where only Quark and Odo are really like characters we can engage with, and as a result, like they're both good, but everyone else sucks. So
Yeah.
that's basically Bashir's character. He doesn't have a huge role in the story, but he is the one who sort of makes the cure in the end, and then Odo is going to use the cure and save the day. But we'll get to that. But it's very
Hmm.
clear once Bashir talks to Odo. Odo realizes something's up with Bashir. I should look into this. And that's like the most we could probably say about him. Next is
Hmm.
Dax. Dax is very weird. She's the first person we see in any way affected by this. She seems a bit distracted and scatterbrained. She's constantly telling people these old stories, but she's saying the same story over and over again. She's kind of getting distracted by pretty
Hmm.
lights. She's unable to like focus on any individual task. And even later in the episode, when Kira is trying to convince Dax to join her side, Dax is like unable to follow a through line. Like she's kind of like, "What do you mean? I'm not sure what's going on." And as a result, like I guess her character is just scatterbrained, and I think the reason for it is because she's a Trill. Like if it's a mind
Yeah. So I
virus,
think. Yeah. I'm thinking it's so yes. The fact is my but you know how she's pulling upon all these different threads in her head because she's having to deal with oh, what lifetime is she right now? The eighth? I can't remember. But it's like she has all these lifetimes to, call upon and use. But we all we've discussed trills before and like the issues of having to basically maintain your identity within this collective
yeah,
and compartmentalize it all properly. She's having trouble like she's experiencing these stimuli along with the fact of like she's having trouble keeping things straight, remembering what she's already said in this lifetime rather than another
yeah,
lifetime because she might think like with her retelling stories it could be she's thinking, oh, I told that story in a past lifetime to other people, I can tell it now. It's again, it's like, no, you already told us, right? It's
yeah. At one point, she tells Kira a story, and then Kira comments later on. It's like you told me this story earlier this morning. So it's like she's saying the same story within the same day.
yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like that, right? And part of it is also she's like Dax as a character herself without like the sort of past lives. She's generally pretty laid back. She's very much easygoing, willing to sort of like interact with anybody and everybody, and doesn't really take anything too seriously. Admittedly, like she's a professional, right? But when shit hits the fan,
Hmm.
she's kind of willing to crack a joke from time to time. So she's also very
Hmm.
laid back, and she's not at all invested in like the power dynamic struggle between Kira and Cisco. So really,
Hmm.
she ends up just kind of being this passive character. And in fact, a huge plot line ends up revolving around the fact that Kira wanted Dax to disable the transporters, and Dax just forgot to do it. And as a result, Cisco gets away from Kira's plans. So like
Hmm.
part of the plot is like hinges on the fact that Dax is just so forgetful, which is fair, but it's also super convenient. So, it's like I don't think it's a great justification, but again, it's just like this character is so flanderized. Like, yeah, that's the only way she's acting in this episode, right? It's like that's all you're doing. So, like, of course you're gonna act forgetful. I shouldn't expect otherwise. It's not as much of a contrivance so much as it's convenient for Cisco. But it's also just
Yeah.
like, again, I guess your character in this episode is just laid back, forgetful, scatterbrained. And I guess the Trill is the symbiote is also impacted, which is why it's probably affecting Dax maybe twice as much.
Yeah.
Like that might
Yeah.
make some sense. But that's Dax as a character. She ends up siding with the Kira side of the dynamic, and like I guess the scene that uh, Irish Stephen Bear like mentioned, where it's like, oh, you're gonna like the episode when Kira is flirting with Dax. It's like, let's see if I can find that episode on the screen. It's like, or that scene. Like, I wouldn't I wouldn't say Kira is flirting with her. I guess Kira's being like overly friendly, which is fair. I guess you could interpret that as flirting, but it just more to me seemed like Kira was trying to get something out of Dax. And
Yeah.
she was just like aggressively trying to be like, Dax, you're really like Jedzia, you're incredibly intelligent, you're incredibly talented, you're amazing. It's like, okay, I guess that could be flirting, but it's very clear that Kira has her own goal, so I didn't interpret it as flirting. I interpreted it as like trying to butter her up, because like what she basically is trying to do is she's trying to say, hey, Dax is more or less second in command when it comes to Starfleet officers. If she can get Cisco removed and Jadzia's on her side, Kira wins. That's her mindset.
Yeah.
So it ends up just kind of being like, it's just like, okay, I guess it's interpreted as a flirting. That's what it's intended to be. But I just didn't get that. And Dax is usually a flirty character,
Yeah.
but here she's not really responsive, so it's hard to interpret what she's doing as flirting back. So again, doesn't really work super well. I think like as a character, like having her be so passive is a little sad because it's like, okay, you don't really do much in the episode. Now let's get. I guess it's probably best we talk about Kira and Cisco now because these are the two like driving forces in the episode. So
Yeah.
Kira's
Well,
entire. You go on.
nah. Actually, I don't think it's Cisco. Oh, it's O'Brien, because
That's also kind
Cisco.
of true. Although Cisco does play a pretty big role in it, but you're right. O'Brien's up there.
Yeah, O'Brien plays it's basically the queen protecting the king, like in chess. Because Cisco most of the episode, when he's not directly plotting with O'Brien, he's making his little clock thing, right? But O'Brien's the mover, the shaker for his side, and like it's almost like, oh, he would rule from behind the scenes of Cisco, which fits his character in the sense of like, oh, as the like highest ranked enlisted guy who's also the chief of engineering and such. It's like, yeah, the officers often have to like listen slash trust what O'Brien says. He often like if him and a lieutenant, or like, well, actually, I should say, if him and an ensign are working together, he might call the ensign sir, but he's the one who knows what's going on,
I mean,
right?
that's an interesting
Um,
interpretation. I think I got a little bit the opposite. I guess we're talking about O'Brien now first. So
yeah, sorry.
O'Brien, I'm interpreting what O'Brien is doing as like he is characterized as like insanely loyal, which is something we know about him. He's a soldier. He was in the trenches with his own brothers, and for him, loyalty is very high up there. Like,
Yeah,
and he's loyal to Cisco, right? Because Cisco's his commanding officer.
yeah.
So everything he does, he's insanely proactive about it. But I don't think it's from a I'm going to lead from behind. It's in a no, like I am loyal, and as a loyal person, I'm going to follow Cisco to the ends of the earth.
Yeah. Well, listen. This thing makes them all a little bit devious. So it's like,
Yeah, no, obviously, yeah, and
hmm.
it's hard. Again, we can't. The characters of DS9 are so rich, but oftentimes there's many aspects of them we can't bring up because it's not prevalent in that episode, right? So,
Hmm.
Cisco can be described as one way in one episode and another way in a different episode, and this doesn't contradict because he's a tapestry of a character, and all these different episodes are different scenes and different situations he has to interact with, and different roles he has to fill as a person. That's what makes them such great
Hmm.
characters. Here, even if the characters weren't just simply Flanderized, we only get an episode
Mm-hmm.
with these paranoid characters, so it's really hard to say who they are definitively, right? Because I agree with you to an extent that O'Brien's very sort of devious and leading. Like at one point, he tells Cisco to go wait in his quarters because it's safer there, and he's sitting in Cisco's chair, and it's like, oh, like what's going on here? Is O'Brien kind of like trying to take control of the station? Except he never falters in his loyalty to Cisco, so he very much seems to be in the
Mm-hmm.
realm of Cisco first. I'm me next though, and he's staunchly
Yeah.
aggressive to anyone who doesn't choose a side. So, one of the first things he does is when he and Jadzia are in a runabout early in the episode, he basically asks her whose side she's going to be on if it came down between Cisco and Kira. And Jadzia, being laid back, doesn't
Mm-hmm.
really choose a side. And O'Brien says, "If you're not with Cisco, then you're not with me." Like he's very aggressive about that sort of aspect. And
Mm-hmm.
again,
Mm-hmm.
I like
Mm-hmm.
his character here. I suppose it's an interesting side of O'Brien, but at the same time, I don't really value seeing this characterized version of him. I guess it's cool to
Mm-hmm.
see how he might have operated when on the front lines when fighting the Cardassians. This is probably close
Yeah.
to how he behaved, a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more headstrong, as opposed to the more laid back father that he's now become. So, like,
Mm.
it's interesting enough to see. Then we have Cisco. So Cisco spends most of the episode designing and building a clock. Um, there's a bit of a meta line at the end of the episode where, when everything's resolved, Kira asks him why he built the clock, and he says he doesn't know. That's as
Yeah.
far as the clock goes. Like,
I
um,
mean, it doesn't emphasize like, oh, the thing they picked for Cisco is kind of the thing he's known for. He's a
yeah,
builder. Like he
no,
builds
100%.
relationships.
And again, that's where it's like I find this annoying because even when the episode ends and there's this question of why did you build that, they could have said something definitively. Or what does Cisco think about why he built it? Like why is it in my characterized parody state, like my parody paranoid state, did I build a clock? Like what does that say about me as a person or a character? Uh, and
I mean,
they say
so
nothing. They say nothing. It's like, okay, I guess we like you like building things. That's it.
you want so no, so I actually do want to like maybe make an argument of what it
Yeah, go
represents,
ahead.
right?
Go ahead. Yeah.
So so while Cisco is often pragmatic and will straight punch something to, get the problem solved, as an engineer and builder, he wants something that can run perfectly and, be used for like very utilitarian purposes of like, keeping track of time and such. A clock is very good for that, of course, but it's also like, oh, clocks are very intensive in how you have to design a
Hmm.
mechanical watch to properly function. And so there's a reason why for the longest time watchmakers generally were paid very good money because what they made was very difficult to make, even compared to like just blacksmithing and such. Like a blacksmith would be fairly well off because they can make various items and such. A watchmaker is wealthy because he makes what is like something that's very valued by the nobility, like the well off and such, and they can do it well. And it's like, oh, like there might be an argument like, oh, there's some nobility there, despite Cisco's rough exterior. At times he's very patient, dedicated to his craft, and he's willing to do what has to be done to make it work. That's what I would argue. But again, as you said, they don't actually say that. They just leave it there, and it's like, okay,
Well, and you don't
like
have to say that. Obviously, like a testament to good writing is the ability to convey something without saying it out loud. I agree with you, and
mm-hmm,
I will kind of agree. Obviously, like something working like clockwork is a description of like it being well put together. Something well designed runs like clockwork. So clocks are sort of symbolic for something functioning, working together, and maybe you can kind of draw that sort of symbolism to Cisco's goal in this overall story of DS9 is to make the Bajoran sector of space work with the Federation and make this entire circumstance with the wormhole function. Right? It's like you need to make
mm-hmm,
this event work like clockwork. So yeah, like Cisco's a builder, and this is some early examples of why he is a builder, right? But I guess more of what I want is why did he personally choose to build a clock? Like, I get what it represents, I get what you're supposed to take from it, but like when
Yeah.
asked why did he build it, he has no clue. And I'm like, I
Really,
mean,
it should have been like a ship. It should have been a ship.
that's actually
Like
what I
just
literally when I was trying to recall this episode, that's what I thought he had built. I thought he designed a ship, not
yeah,
built one, right? But he like designed a ship and then built maybe a model of it. But
yeah,
we know he's worked on ships before, and you could just always allude to the fact that he's built ships, right? The fact that
yeah,
he would build these ships and then he would design ships and then he worked in a shipbuilding factory or system or station. If you just do
yeah.
that, you don't need to show him building the clock.
Yeah. Really, every episode should just open with him building another model ship.
I mean, I don't
Um,
think every episode, but I agree with you in that it's just I don't know. I don't want to get too hung up on the clock, but I think it's very much indicative of this episode. Why did Cisco build the clock?
mm,
Well, because right now he's like demonstrating the builder aspect of his character. Oh, okay, cool. What else? No, that's it. Remember, everyone's caricaturized here, so they have like the one trait, and I'm like, oh,
mhm.
I mean, all right.
Yeah,
Like, I don't feel like there's anything more than the surface read of Cisco built a clock because he likes building things, and it's a cool looking
yeah,
clock. Like it's weird because like I guess like it's hard to tell because we don't really get a great look at it. Maybe it kind of looks
yeah.
Bajoran in design.
It's a different planet. I checked because well, it's not checked, but they in the trivia section they're like, oh yeah, this appears in later episodes in the backgrounds and such of The Office because it's like, hey, it's something Cisco made. He likes it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean
Um.
it's just it's I just don't think it's like it says a lot. It says very little, which is what kind
Yeah.
of this episode's mostly about. Now we get to Kira, right? So if someone were to characterize Kira, the thing they would generally like point out is she puts Bajoran interests above others, right? That's something that's like very simple about her character.
Yeah.
Uh, Now, generally, a lot of
And
episodes
she's
challenge
also.
that.
I think there's two things here. One, the Bajoran interest, but also she's very aggressive, like very like head on,
Well, and I guess
active
like
and head on.
yeah, I agree. And I think the best thing this episode might do, although it's hard to tell if it's a part of her character or part of the sort of paranoia that this mind virus causes, but she's very cunning. She's able to like sneak around. She's trying to convince people to join her side, and that's not really a side you see to her. She's generally much more direct. So I guess the best thing we can kind of say
Well,
is she maybe possesses a level of cunning.
yeah. So this is something that comes up later when she actually has to be a guerrilla fighter and such. Like, remember when they were on that planet battle lines where Kyle Paka has to stay. She immediately was like, seeing what was going on, was like, you need to do better than this. Like she immediately was like coming up with like better ways for them to fight and survive. Until they point out like it doesn't matter. Like we'll just come back to life anyways, right? And
Yeah.
so um, it's one of the things like and we'll see it actually at the start of the next season when they have to get somewhere and she's like uh yeah, like you can drop off at this location and I can take me and Dax to find an old hideout we had that should still have a one of the, it's not a runabout but you know what I mean,
No, yeah, like
like
I mean, I guess like what I just meant because yeah, she's clever, right? She very clearly can operate as a guerrilla warfare soldier. I guess I mostly mean in the sense
mhm,
of most of her way of interacting that we've seen are like, oh yeah, draw these battle lines, draw like get a firing squad here, and or like she basically is really good at organizing the warfare guerrilla aspect. But to sort of see her playing almost a
mhm,
political game, right? Is she's going from person to person,
mhm,
saying what they want to hear, trying to convince them to join her side. That's not something we've seen from her before, and I guess this just points out she might have that potential.
mhm.
But
Yeah,
again,
yeah,
anything we're reading into it has to just be our reading into it because the episode says nothing else. Um,
yep,
and we don't have much to. Again, like part of the issue is we don't have anything to cross reference. When we ever talk about like you just did, when you talk about Kira as a character, you'll bring in multiple references from different episodes because if the episode doesn't outright say what Kira is, who Kira is as a person, we have to cross reference this to different scenes and be like, this is how she acts in these different circumstances. So when we
mhm,
get variations of these characters into like one episode, I'm like, okay, I can't really tell what you're trying to tell me about this character because these are effectively new characters. I don't know what you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to say about them other than like, okay, this is their one trait. I'm like, okay, cool. Do they have any others? Like maybe. It's kind of hard to tell because they're so characterized, but we don't have any other scenes for you to like, chew into.
Mm-hmm.
So, and her character is mad at. If we haven't stated before, her character is combating with Cisco because, as far as she's concerned, the Valerians need to be stopped, and their boarding procedure needs to be delayed so that they have the least amount of chance until they know for a fact these people are not running guns. So she goes behind
Mm-hmm.
Cisco's back, stops the transport ship. Cisco learns and he gets angry. At one point, Kira tries to go behind Cisco's back with Odo. Odo very clearly figures it out, and that's the second instance where he sort of learns that people are acting weird. And I think that's the part that really confirms to him that everyone's acting strange.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see.
Yeah.
We talked about O'Brien, Cisco, Dax, Kira. I mean, we kind of talked about everybody in terms of who they are as
Yeah.
characters here. Um, one major issue, and I think unironically, this is how this episode is worse than Babel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, like in Babel, the issue was this virus was infecting the whole station, right?
Mm-hmm.
So while it was affecting the commanding officers, it was also something that, okay, there are civilians who are in danger. It's supposed to be a dramatic moment when Jake gets infected by the disease because Jake is just a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for some reason, the mind virus seems to only be affecting the bridge crew.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like this is going around the station and everyone's acting paranoid. It's Cisco, Jadzia, Kira, Bashir, and O'Brien are the only characters acting weird. And
Man, imagine if the whole episode, if like the whole station was this way, besides Odo and the chaos that would cause.
oh, of course, like that probably would have been too much. They might have thrown that idea in the writing room and been like, no, that'd be too difficult to manage. It would be the station would get destroyed immediately. Although, admittedly, we do see a Federation officer who was stationed outside of Cisco's room. Um, like he
Mm-hmm.
seems to be like following Cisco and O'Brien's orders, but that could literally just be an officer following orders. In fact, he's not an officer; he was ordered by O'Brien, so he's probably an enlisted.
Oh yeah,
So it's
he's the
like,
E4. He's the E4 who packs his space backpack with space bed sheets for the space tactical ruck.
I'm glad you added space to that. Uh, anyway,
Well, yeah, everything in space is space.
exactly.
Yeah.
Um, but it's so I guess like it does. I don't know if like any of the officers are acting weird, or if they're affected by the mind virus. But or I'm not, any of the officers. I just mean any other staff members. If they're not, they really should be questioning what's going on because Commander Cisco's acting weird. And you know, if they are, I guess that's just
Mm-hmm.
consistent. It doesn't. We don't really get a lot of seeing that. And again, if this virus is contagious because it went from the Klingon to all of them, why are they not spreading it to other people?
Yeah, that's I don't
Yeah,
I
again,
don't know.
it doesn't really make sense. That's another huge plot hole in this episode is that the episode really just doesn't function. In fact, I think there's some Bajorans that follow Kira when she basically like goes to take out Cisco. She goes to kill him. So there's Bajorans following her. I guess they're also infected. But again, if this is infecting more people than just the bridge crew, or if they're just following orders, if they're just following orders, that's more consistent. But if they're infected like with the bridge crew, then this whole station should be infected. But it doesn't seem to be that way.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know, man.
unless most people are just laid back.
Too small
I don't.
brained. Too small brained.
They're too small brained. Oh, Kira is more aggressive. You were right about that. She beats the crap out of Quark. He flirts with her, and she's always been aggressive with Quark, and now she just beats the crap out of him. And he walks into
Hey.
Odo's office with a neck brace, and he's like, "I demand
Mhm.
satisfaction. I want you to put charges against Officer Kira." Um,
No.
and it's funny because he's like speaking with a thin voice. It sounds like he's actually injured, but then by the end of it, he speaks in a much more loud voice, and it sounds like maybe he's just trying to, get one over on someone. He's doing the whole insurance fraud thing.
Based. Based. Very
Um,
based.
And otherwise, like at one point,
Mm.
Cisco just doesn't want to interact with anyone anymore. Again, he just wants to focus on building his clock, so he doesn't really do anything until the end, where he starts screaming. He beats the crap out of like one smaller officer who was questioning his decision. Um, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, then Kira, starts her attack. Yeah, he beats the crap out of a Bajoran officer. Uh, so that's who was trying
Mm.
to assassinate him. That's right. So I guess everyone is infected. I guess that has to confirm it because I can't imagine a Bajoran officer would just assassinate Cisco.
Mm-hmm.
Like there should be some more questions being thrown around if not other people are infected. But it only seems like characters in positions of power are infected. Um,
Yeah.
Cisco and O'Brien run
Yeah.
away and escape from Kira in part because Jadzia forgot to turn off the transporters. They're running around. Odo convinces them that he's on their side, so he tells them to go to the hangar bay. Then he convinces
Mm-hmm.
Kira and Jadzia that he's on their side, so he sends them to the hangar bay. And then here's another plot hole.
Mm-hmm.
He gets everyone to go to the hangar bay, the same hangar bay, because he wants to purge the virus from their minds all at once. Which, again, given the fact that he only gets a certain number of people in there to purge their minds, it seems like it's only infecting these people, not the whole station. So I guess that has to confirm it. Again,
Yeah.
they seem to be going back and forth on this. But
Mm.
there's an issue because once Odo sends Kira and Dax to the same cargo bay that O'Brien and Cisco were in, he turns to Bashir and he says, "Have you finished with that cure yet?" Which means the cure is not
Mm-hmm.
finished, and he's already sending these people to fight each other.
Yeah, a couple
Like,
couple
if O'Brien
casualties.
if O'Brien didn't finish this, like the psychic cure all or whatever he's doing, within like 5 minutes, half the crew would have been dead. So yeah,
Yeah.
it seems very unreasonable. You wouldn't tell your targets to all go fight each other in the same room. You would do your best to stall until the cure is made, and then you would send them all together. But instead, Odo just sends them all together and then asks if the cure is ready. Now,
Mm.
if there was a situation where like he had no other choice, I guess that makes sense. But he doesn't even seem to try. He's just like, "Oh, I'm totally on your side. Just I left Cisco and O'Brien in the hangar bay. Go down there. You'll totally find them." And again, it
Mm-hmm.
just doesn't really work. And yeah, we get to the final part of this, which is really dumb. So he gets O'Brien, or no, he Bashir makes the cure, but O'Brien basically like codes the trigger to his voice command. So when everyone's inside the hangar bay, he reads the voice command, and a purple light shines out of the back from everyone's head, and the psychic mind virus is no longer infecting them. Uh, and then Odo tells everybody to hang on to something, uh, and then he opens the hangar bay door into space. The
Mm.
entire crew dies right here. It was a pretty bold choice, I think, to end DS9 with this scene, where they all get sucked into the vacuum of space and die instantaneously. But I think it worked out. I think it's a pretty legendary series for it.
Mm-hmm. 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 Pretty
Okay,
pretty
but
pretty big.
in actuality, they're actually able to just hold on. They just hold on the entire time when they're supposed to be sucked into space, and it does like obviously the budget is not great, so they're just standing there bracing against some walls, being like, "Oh no, we're being sucked into space," and we close the hangar bay door, we're good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's
Yeah.
that is a really stupid ending, right? Again, it's like I'm very confused to the nature of this virus, and even more so, you should just all be dead. This was a very stupid plan. It seems very clear that you had no idea how to just fix the problem, so you're like, and they vented into space and it's solved. Even Cisco says, with the psychic thing vented into space, everything went back to normal. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess so. Um, yeah, they called it the telepathic matrix, is what it's called. So that's the
Mm-hmm.
thing that infects their mind. And
Mm.
yeah, this is very short because honestly, I don't really have anything else to say about this episode. Everyone's out of character, and it's just not good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I brought it up to you that I think this concept can work if you do it to like one or two characters, right? So if you
Mm-hmm.
had Cisco and Kira, uh, like if they were the only two infected and they were caricatures of themselves, at least then, right, what we get are people interacting with these caricaturized versions of Cisco and Kira.
Hmm.
We would see how a characterized version of Cisco deals with O'Brien, Bashir, Dax, and we would see how Kira deals with all of them. And that would be interesting
Hmm.
because it could tell us more about those characters and how they interact with like the most extreme versions of some of Kira and Cisco's traits. The problem is when everyone is infected by this, with the exception of Odo, um,
Hmm.
you get nothing else for these characters. How an extreme version of Kira interacts with an extreme version of Cisco is so far removed from their normal interactions that I feel like you can't take anything away from it. Meanwhile, if it was an extreme
Yeah.
version of Kira dealing with a normal Cisco, that could tell me something about how an extreme version of Kira's traits would, work with a more mild mannered Cisco, and how a Cisco would have to manage a more extreme version of Kira, and
Yeah.
that could be something interesting. We kind of get a little bit of that with Odo. Again, I like some of the Odo scenes where he's tricking these people, and he's playing off of their new personalities. But
Hmm.
it's just too little, and there's so many other issues with this
Yeah.
episode that it doesn't really matter. Again, Odo and Quark are the only characters who come out of this episode smelling like roses. Everyone else is just wading through trash, and like I think this might be. I don't think this is the worst episode. This is really a lot of this episode is just a nothing burger, right? It's just okay, you were acting weird, you know.
Yeah.
And at the end of the episode, uh, Kira asks, Kira says, like, look, I understand that we were mind controlled and we've all kind of agreed that none of us are responsible for what happened, which is fair. But she
Yeah.
still wants to apologize, which, again, I don't actually dislike as a character thing, right? It's like, even when under some mental strain, a part of me was aggressive towards you, and I do apologize for that. And, like, okay, I do actually kind of like that. But
Hmm.
again, that acknowledgement of none of us are responsible for what happened, like, that's actually said by the episode. It's like, oh, so like there's nothing there, like there's nothing to sort of take away from this, right? How
Hmm.
the characters treated one another, like there's no, I don't know, like again, you could do something interesting where what if O'Brien was infected by this and a extreme version of his personality had to interact with everyone else, and from that point on people have maybe a different perspective of O'Brien, right? Like they're like, oh, I never thought he had this kind of person in him, but I can see that that's the kind of person he is because I've seen the characterized version of his trait.
Hmm.
So
The caricatured. Yeah.
caricaturized
Ye-
version, and it's like it tells you a little bit more about the character, and other people can understand that. So we as the viewer get an advantage, or we get the ability to understand the world by understanding what a other character understands. Meanwhile, it's like honestly, you can just write this episode out and nothing changes. There's no advancement of the world. There's no
hmm.
advancement of character. The benefit of DS9, and I've said it again and again, the benefit of DS9 is it is filled. Even the worst episodes have character usually and world building. Unlike something like TNG, right, where every episode is more or less standalone, and the skippable episodes
Mm.
of TNG are always going to be skippable. But there are episodes in DS9 that the plot might be skippable, but the stuff it does with characters is not, and that elevates the
Hmm.
series as a whole. This is an episode similar to Babel, where because of the circumstances of the plot, we are denied character interactions.
Hmm.
Babel
Hmm.
made it so
Hmm.
people couldn't communicate with each other, and they were all slowly dying. So we really didn't get any good dialogue or character interactions with most of the characters. Meanwhile, this episode completely changes the characters. So as a result, the only character we get anything for is Odo, and I don't think there's anything we learn in this episode that we didn't already know about Odo. At one point, Kira does mention
Yeah.
how. At one point, Kira does mention how they had been close friends for a long time, and Odo kind of agrees with that. So I guess that's a more confirmation that they have been close friends for a while. But we also know
Mhm.
that this is a version of Kira that is trying to manipulate Odo. So we don't know if she really
Yeah.
means that. Like, for all we know, she doesn't view Odo as a friend. She's just trying to use the fact that
Hmm.
he views her as a friend. Now, we know that's not the case, but that scene alone doesn't tell us anything. The only reason I know that she means that is because I have context from later episodes.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, all in all, this episode is easily is easily a D, maybe an F. Um, there's maybe one or two good things. I'm gonna say D because a lot of the episode is really just nothing. It's not bad. It's just nothing. Um,
Yeah.
and then the bad parts are bad. So it's like I don't think it's catastrophic for anything. I don't think any characters are ruined, and I don't think there's any world building like fuck ups. I feel like I've talked enough about this
But
episode. Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna agree with you there. It's just like, as we've said, it's like there's problems here, and it's just like, eh, like it's just, but it's not like this fundamentally ruins the whole series, or this like it's definitely the low point.
Yeah.
Like
I mean,
I
like the
like
Dax episode that it didn't ruin Dax forever, but it ruined Dax up until that point.
yeah, because so it's like this this is the least offensive of the three bad episodes we've seen because Dax. Oh, Dax, your
I
episode.
mean, I'm wondering, is this better than Move Along Home?
I would say it's better because they at least resolve the issue of like like so none of the so here's the thing with Move Along Home. Quark gets like while he like fucked up, he gets a little unfairly like judged for it, and then the aliens who caused this get away with it because it's, and we went on and on about this. Meanwhile, this is just a bad episode of the week episode. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and you know what? We
uh,
also do get good character stuff for Quark and Move Along Home. You
well,
know,
so Move Along Home has Quark, but then it's like we have all these issues of that scenario where it's like so let me put it like this: we could adjust this episode to where it's two characters instead, right? Or make one or two characters who are affected, and they have to deal with that. Uh, Move Along Home. I fundamentally, if a species did something like that, like if even one of their representatives did something like that, immediately the whole setting, like the Federation needs to be like, okay, your guys are persona non grata, and you need to keep your people in line from now on, or else you're getting like you as a species are persona non grata. But that never comes up there. Like here, they at least resolve it. Of like Kira comes to apologize and such, and they discuss what Cisco made. Um, at least a little. Like it's not enough to be good, but it's still like, oh, there's enough there that I'd be like, yeah, like we could work on that, improve it. But Move Along Home is just a torture Quark episode and torture the bridge crew episode. It's like, wow, it's not a torture O'Brien episode for once.
I mean,
um
what I'll
but
say is I do like the stuff they put Quark through and Move Along Home. Um, I mean, you know what? It's difficult. I think they're bad in two separate ways. I think we can agree
yeah.
Dax is the worst of the three, but I think these two might be almost equal to me in terms of like I don't
Mm-hmm.
feel like at least the thing I can say about Move Along Home, right, is with the exception of that species getting off scot free, most of the characters in Move Along Home are in character. Like Kira and
Mm-hmm.
Cisco seem like fed up with the fact they have to do these stupid kid games. So it's like I guess
Mm-hmm.
it's fair, right? It's just kind of dumb. It's like it's dumb, but I can at least kind of there's at least character, right? There's character that I can latch onto and be like, okay, this is a thing. There's some world building, screw ups. I don't know how the technology there works. I think they're both bad in different
Mm-hmm.
ways. I think like
Yeah,
it's hard to
yeah.
really like we get to a point where we're arguing something between like a 2 and a 3 in
Mm.
terms of like quality out of 10, right? Where it's like
Mm-hmm.
both of these are just garbage. Not 2 and a 3.
Both of
I
you are
guess like
just the war.
I guess like a 4 and a 5. No, a 4 and a 3. Like they might be the
Mm.
same. They might be equally bad, but like I don't
Mm.
think there's a definitive line. In fact, it might literally depend on the day you ask me. It's like, do you think Move Along Home or what the hell is this episode called? Dramatis Personae.
Dramatis
Which of
yeah.
these two do you think is a bad episode or worse episode? It might literally depend on the day. In fact, I actually want to look. I could probably find this episode on IMDb and see what it got. Let's see. Da-da-da.
IMDb, baby. Let's go. I am
7 out of 10.
getting that. Yeah, yeah, that's high.
This might be our first This might be our first hot take that we express on the series. Um, Let me look at Move Along
Let
Home.
me go.
Where is Move Along Home? This is a 5 out of 10, so a 6 almost, 5.8. So okay, that really
Oh,
should be worse. So maybe this works. Let me look at Dax. What's Dax rated at? Oh wait, hold on.
I'm
Yeah,
trying to.
Duet is the top rated episode of this season.
Of
Um,
course.
okay, so Dax is also 7.1. So
7.1? Holy shit, you people are wrong.
I
God, you should
mean,
be ashamed that this is this high.
again, I think the thing that I kind of I hold on. I think this is IMDb. A lot of times stuff is rated on a pretty weird curve. Like a 5 is an
Hmm.
F to them, which to me a 5 is average, right? I think it's a 5 is an average for you too, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So for a lot
yeah,
of people who look at this, if you get a 5 on an episode, that's an F.
yeah.
So I guess a 7 in this case would be like a C to them. I guess that's
Mhm.
accurate. So I guess that's fair, right? I mean, like I think these episodes are both worse, but we're also a little bit more critical of them. Admittedly, we also probably praise some of
Mhm.
them a lot more than others. Like, where is the Forsaken? The Forsaken is a 6.9. IMDb is dead to me. Oh my god, you cannot.
uh,
No, absolutely not. Okay, I'm actually mad now. The same emotion you
man.
had 5 minutes ago, I now have. It's me. The mind virus has gone from you to me, Pike.
It's like, yeah, like I'm just sitting here like, man, I want to pop some reviewers in the jaw. Just
Admit,
what the?
admittedly, two other episodes that are highly rated from DS9: Trials and Tribulations, which is fair, and of
Yeah, it's a
course,
fun episode. Very.
In the Pale Moonlight at 9.4.
Oh, yeah. Wait, what do they rate? It's only a paper moon. I'm curious. Where are you? I wanna.
Let me see. It's only a paper moon.
0.3? Oh God, I hate. I, God,
8.3 is still pretty high. It's hard to tell where these people. Again, these are community people judging this generally. So, yeah, I
mm.
don't. I mean, In a Paper Moon is. I don't think it's better than In the Pale Moonlight, but goddamn, is it emotional?
Oh yeah, it's a 9. Like I'm not saying it's better than in the Pale Moonlight, but it's only a paper moon is like the best Nog episode you will ever get, and it perfectly culminates all his character development and what he's gone through throughout the series.
Yeah, I mean, like
Like
honestly,
hot
it.
take, everyone.
On, no, yeah, go say your hot take, because apparently this is the day
Yeah,
of hot
hot
takes for
take.
us.
Yeah, hot take. Nog's the best character in the series. You can eat my ass. Like
Really?
legitimately.
Okay.
Y- Yes, because we see this child become a young man. We see everything like the positive influence the Federation's presence has on him, turning his life away from what would have been, probably like crime adjacent and at the very least like, like not very respectable to he's the first Ferengi in Star Trek. He thinks like
Starfleet.
he thinks he's gonna go so. I mean, yeah, Starfleet, right? He's gonna go so far and such, and then like the previous episode, the siege of AR 558, hits him like a fucking truck, and this is dealing with the fallout and him basically having to recover. But like we see him grow into a person, and hey, guess what? Star Trek Online shows like what Nog becomes, and it's like, yeah, he is fully fulfilled, like as a character. Every other character is like I would say pretty much every other character is good in the series in some way, but it's like, yeah, Nog is the story of like he's the one with the story we see the most in terms of like it actually going somewhere and being fulfilled. While I mean, I guess yeah, Cisco as well, but oh my God, then there's like I just like Nox story. Like I will say like Nox story is just the one I'm like, oh, we see the boy grow,
No, I
truly
mean,
grow.
I agree with you. I love Nog. I think he's a phenomenal character, and it's so unique sometimes to see Um, it's so unique to see a character where we get to follow him from beginning to end. A lot of times Star Trek characters that we follow are already accomplished individuals in some degree, right?
Yeah.
So it's cool to be able to see a character start from the ground up. Um, but my goat will always be plain simple Garrick. Admittedly, he has one scene in this entire season.
Wait, no, no, wait. Of course, the best characters are Nog and Garrick. They have like one of the best little scenes, like little exchanges where at one point it's a callback to a previous episode, but they're together on this planet, and Nog is walking behind him with the firearm, and Garrick mentions like, "Are you afraid to walk in front of me?" It's like, "No, I just don't trust you to walk behind me." Is this about what happened on Tarek and Poor? I said I was sorry about that. I don't care.
they
Good.
they
You
do have
shouldn't
they do
trust
have
me.
some great interactions, but I'm not gonna lie. I think when we did our ratings, for me it was definitely somewhere between Nog, Garrick, and Cisco. But I think I put Cisco and Garrick a good step above Nog for me. But I get why you would put Nog as your favorite. Like it's just there's so much to love about the character.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean like you know, I guess to finish this off, episode not really good. I think at the end of the day, any episode where I heard someone describe storytelling in a very interesting way the other day. When you're writing a story,
Hmm.
and I paid a lot of attention to this because self shameless plug, I'm writing my own book, everybody. But one of the things he mentioned when he was talking, God, I can't remember his name, but I'll say it anyway. This idea that storytelling, when you're writing a story, you kind of want to grab all as many crayons from the crayon box as possible, right? The idea
Hmm.
there is you grab all these crayons and you have them and you can use them. You don't have to, but you can use them to paint your picture. So
Hmm.
when you intentionally ignore certain crayons from the crayon box, that could be an artistic choice. Hey, I want to really focus on, like, ultimately, a lot of ways, a bottle episode is ignoring some of the crayons in your crayon box, right? It's we're locking characters
Hmm.
in a room and we're making them interact with one another. We don't have any of this outside stuff. We don't have other plot lines to go on. But that is an intentional artistic choice, and it's a risky one. A lot of bottle episodes might not be interesting, right? Because it's just characters
Yeah.
locked in a room talking. There might not be like any bombastic plot line or high stakes available. It might just be character. If you're good at writing character,
Hmm.
that's great. If you're not, it's not great. But
Not great.
when it comes to stuff like this, when you write out the ability for people to communicate with one another, like in Babel, that really hurts your
Hmm.
story. And when you write that every character is being caricatured except for like one, that really hurts your story because you lose any way of sinking your teeth into this episode. I will say this,
Hmm.
except for maybe one or two scenes, there is almost no reason to ever rewatch this episode. I do not see any value in it. I do not like the reason we were just talking about it. In a Paper Moon is a great episode because it is a accumulation of Nog's growth, right? It is
Hmm.
he has reached a point in his life where he has accomplished so much, and then a lot of it seems to be taken away from him, and it's him trying to get accustomed to facing his own mortality and facing his own failure. That is such a
Yeah.
character focused episode. Meanwhile, right, in a Pale Moonlight is all about Cisco. It is such a character focused about him challenging his own morals. It is character focused.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, this episode says character. What's that? It's this. We're going to turn everybody into a parody of this one trait they have, and it's like, okay, you can do that, but you lose the ability to really delve deeply into these characters. Hell, even in Forsaken, you expanded upon like Odo's character along with Luxana. Right? You expanded upon these two
Hmm.
characters by throwing them into an elevator and making them interact in a phenomenal way. But if you just turn people into these caricatures, they can't interact with each other in a meaningful way, and I can't get anything out of that. It might be fun. It might be
Hmm.
like fun flashing lights. Oh, don't you want to see an episode where Cisco and Bashir fight Dax and Kira? Yeah, I guess that's kind of fun in theory, but there's just nothing here.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
all in all, I mean, I give this episode maybe I like I said before, I give it a D. Like it's not awful,
Yeah,
awful, but it's not good in any way.
yeah. Again, it's just like here's the thing. This episode doesn't make me irrationally angry like Move Along Home does of just putting up with this fucking alien. Like and like them getting away from it. This is just like this is nothing. Like yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
D.
All right. Yeah, that was uh, season 1, episode 18, uh, Dramatis Personae, and yeah. All right, everyone. Have a good day. That's the end of the podcast, and I have stopped recording.
You fucking lied to me. I fucking know it.